All right, with our ongoing health series, we've brought on Sanjeev Javia, who is a nutritional biochemist, very animated, very, very knowledgeable. And I think you're going to like Jeevers quite a bit. You're going to learn something about your body, and you're going to have fun doing it. We're going to talk about nitric oxide. This is someone who has nothing to do with Cardio Miracle, but talks about nitric oxide, talks about the effects of nitric oxide on your body. I really think you're going to like this. As you know, a couple of years ago, I started taking Cardio Miracle because it is an instigator of your body's production of nitric oxide, and it has made all the difference in the world for me. I would not bring that sponsor on if I hadn't tested it first and if it didn't make a difference for me. And when I say a difference, I mean lab tests. It is fully backed by science, and it now even qualifies for an HSA or an FSA as well. Sit back and enjoy Jeevers. He's great. Here we go. All right, welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson, and I am your host. In this episode, I'm excited to bring on Sanjeev Javia, who is a nutritional biochemist, so we can talk about the benefits of nitric oxide. Jeevers, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Greg. I'm excited to talk about a pretty powerful molecule here in nitric oxide, so it'll be great.
Awesome. I want to open up talking or quoting an NIH study. Here's just kind of the summary it gives on nitric oxide. It says nitric oxide is an essential component of the human body involved in blood vessel dilation, stimulation of hormone release, which I believe is mostly HGH and insulin, signaling and regulation of neurotransmission. Nitric oxide supplementation improves cardiac health, enhances performance during exercise, reduces high blood pressure during pregnancy. I think overall it's done it for me. Reduces erectile dysfunction and improves healing processes and respiratory response. To a certain degree, this kind of looks like some miracle drug, like it's going to fix everything. I don't think it does, but it has made a huge change in my life, and I want to get some more specifics from an expert on this, on why I have seen so many changes and how other people can see so many changes. So I want to start with this. I want to start with actually physical performance on this. I know that, I've been a gym guy for a long time. Nitric oxide has always been a part of what is usually a lot of the supplements that are pushed in especially in pre-workout. How does nitric oxide affect someone who is exercising?
Yeah, so nitric oxide, the reason why you're seeing or hearing about all of those benefits that you mentioned earlier is that whenever you have something that is innate to the body, so the body produces nitric oxide. It's a natural endogenous molecule the body produces, okay? Whenever you have those sort of molecules being produced, they're going to be systemic. They're going to be involved in all of the mechanisms that the body needs to function. That's why if you have more of these innate endogenous molecules, then you're going to get greater health, because where health actually becomes vulnerable and weakened is when not only, because we talk a lot about this, in bringing in toxins to the body, but the other, which is actually the major reason why the body actually becomes vulnerable and weak, is that we take in things that will compromise the natural, innate, endogenous healing molecules the body produces. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that a bit when you were saying, well, it just seems kind of like this miracle drug or anything. It's not a miracle. The body's the miracle. It just so happens that if you feed the body the innate fuel so that it can become these miracle mechanisms, then you're going to get greater health. So that's one piece, okay, right? Now to answer your question directly on the performance end, it's all about increasing circulation, increasing blood circulation. In the realm of performance, performance is all about oxygenation. The more oxygenation that your body has the ability to bring in and to hold, you are now going to get greater respiratory benefits. You're going to get greater cognitive benefits. You're going to get muscular contraction and relaxation benefits. All of those happen because of oxygenation. Well, nitric oxide allows for greater circulation and easier oxygenation and better blood flow. Therefore, you're going to get better performance. See, that's the link between nitric oxide and performance. It's about the oxygenation.
Well, does that, for example, let's look at some specifics of performance. Is that mostly going to be cardio that you're going to get? Is it cardio endurance as an example? Or can you actually get help from lifting weights?
You get both. And the reason why is because, think of it this way, is that if you can bring in more oxygen into the lungs, you're going to have a greater VO2. Actually, you're going to have the ability to actually have respiratory processes that are very efficient, right? You're bringing in more oxygen, you're holding on to that oxygen, therefore your cardio benefits are going to be better. But then on the flip side, if you're able to bring in greater oxygen to the muscle and into the energy cycles, you always hear of the ATP cycle, Krebs cycle, citric acid cycle, that these cycles that allow the muscle and the mitochondria, the engine of a cell is the mitochondria. That mitochondria needs oxygen. If you bring in greater oxygen, all those processes cellularly now have the ability to run better. If they run better, that cell is made up, more and more cells make up muscles, right? And so now you have greater muscular function, you have greater ability for that muscle to do what it needs to do, produce output, to recover. That's another huge thing, right? It's all about recovery, right? The reason why, you mentioned earlier is that the reason why, so I formulate nutritional supplements. I've probably formulated, 8 different pre-workouts, and I always will add the nitric oxide precursors, right? So you can't just give the body nitric oxide. It's a signaling.
L-arginine, L-citrulline.
Yep, exactly. You have to give, there's some amino acids, like you mentioned, right? L-arginine has always been kind of the really famous one, okay, right? However, L-citrulline is a more efficient way for you to produce nitric oxide than even L-arginine. It just kind of, basically L-arginine then has metabolized to L-citrulline, that then has to, okay, right? And so if you have both, that's even better, okay, right? But the whole essence is you put those precursors of nitric oxide into a product, you consume them, they then get metabolized into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a signaling gas. It's going to do one major thing in a pre-workout, is it's going to relax the blood vessels. As it relaxes the blood vessels, you get the pump, right? That's why we put it in the pre-workout. I want you to feel the pump. I want you to get those veins popping, right? I want you to feel that energy. But because of that vasodilation, meaning that relaxation of the blood vessel, I'm going to get greater blood flow because it also helps with the viscosity, if you will, of blood, which then makes it easier to flow through the system, which then allows me to bring more oxygen into that blood because that's where oxygen is held onto, right? And so therefore now I've got all this oxygen that's being flowing through the body, it's flowing through the muscles, it's flowing through the lungs, it's flowing through the heart, it's doing all that sort of stuff. And now I've got this pre-workout energy that is, better than me taking a stimulant like a sugar or caffeine, right? And so that's why we put that into a pre-workout. But you'll notice that we're starting to put that into post-workouts as well too, because we want to promote the blood flow, because also blood flow is detoxification. So remember, as I have a mentor that says, healthy blood heals everything. So the more blood flow that you get into an area, two things are going to happen. Number one, blood houses all of the immune factors. They house all the repair factors. They house all of these things that are healing elements. So I'm going to bring more of those healing elements to a specific area. But then because I'm getting flow of blood, I'm also taking away all the debris and waste that inflammation creates. Because remember, inflammation is a healing process, but during that healing process, it creates a lot of metabolites, it creates a lot of waste. So you need a way to actually get those out of that area. Hence the concept of lymphatic massage, massage in general, compression boots, movement, hydration. What are you trying? Why are all of these things recovery type of elements? They're recovery type of elements because they're promoting blood flow
to reduce the toxins and the inflammation.
Exactly.
We can actually say that NO, nitric oxide, fights inflammation, correct?
You never want to fight inflammation. What you want to do is you want to minimize excess inflammation. And then the second thing that you want to do is you want to be able to detoxify after an inflammatory response, right? Because that's a really great point that you bring up, is everyone is always talking about anti-inflammation, anti-inflammatory. This, you should eat this because it's anti-inflammatory. You should do this because it's anti-inflammatory. You don't want anti-inflammation. Anti-inflammation is another word of saying anti-healing. Because the only way that the immune system has to heal things is a inflammation response. Inflammation is a response that the immune system uses as a weapon to heal areas. And we love inflammation. We love it. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't have healing. We wouldn't have health. We wouldn't have all of these immune factors and cytokine, all of these mechanisms that allow for that. But here's the issue. The issue is that we only have so much of an inflammatory response depending on how healthy you are. So let me explain it to you this way, okay, right? Let's imagine that we're at war, okay, right? And we're at war in Afghanistan, let's just say, okay, right? So we send all of our troops over there, right? There's an injury, insult going on, so we send an inflammatory response, meaning all of our troops over to invest in Afghanistan, and we're gonna fight that war, and we're gonna go all in, and we're gonna get it done as fast as we possibly can. That's what we want. We wanna end that war as fast as we can, so we're gonna send as much troops as we possibly can. Problem is right around that time, we also have to fight something in Russia. So then we got to take those troops and we got to send them to Russia. Okay, right? But then around that same time, we've got something going on in Iran. And so then now we got to take some of those. And so now all of a sudden what happens is I have this really great inflammation response, but now it's in 3 areas. And now all of a sudden, this war that was supposed to be done in 30 days in Afghanistan is now going to take 6 months, which is also what's going to take longer in Russia, which is also going to. And so now I've got this constant inflammatory response that's happening in the body. This is called chronic inflammation. And this is a problem. Because here's the thing about inflammation is that it is awesome, but it's only awesome in spurts. And you need it to start and you need it to end. And if you don't get that end, you're going to get this constant simmering of this attack that's happening, which then hurts a lot of different types of areas, because inflammation is, because of its way of how it works, is a petri dish of illness and disease. So if I drop a pathogen, if I drop a bacteria, if I drop a whatever in that petri dish, it's going to be able to grow a whole lot more efficiently than if I didn't have any of that inflammation.
Okay, so because here's what you hear usually, right? You're going to hear inflammation is the source of all of your diseases. Inflammation is the source of all of your problems. Is this more an issue of what's the term I'm thinking of? Causation is not.
Correlation is not.
Correlation is not causation. Yeah.
Is what they're saying, Greg. What they're saying is they're saying that inflammation. It's what I was saying earlier. Inflammation. That if you have inflammation sitting there, okay, right, and it's sitting there, it is going to allow disease and illness to grow. Okay, right. It loves that bed of inflammation. Okay, right. But that doesn't make inflammation bad. That makes chronic inflammation bad. It's excess inflammation is bad, but the inflammation itself and how it's supposed to work and how you're supposed to use it is not bad. You have to have it. If you got rid of all of your inflammation, you would have no healing. The body would not be able to heal any type of issue that you have, because inflammation is the response that's needed. But the thing is what happens in our society is that we have so many wars going on because we're so unhealthy. So the body has to just constantly be in this inflammatory state, which isn't a good state to be in for a long time.
Mostly and then stress and consumption of bad food.
We got, remember, buddy, anything that is insulting to the body is going to create inflammation. So whether it's toxic food, whether it's a high stress lifestyle, whether it's the mind, because we're all crazy and we're like thinking of all this various stuff, anything that's causing the body stress, anything the body's causing stress, it's going to create inflammation. But the thing is that we're supposed to not have so many stresses all of the time. So if you were just supposed to do what you're supposed to do, the inflammation response would say, oh, hey, listen, he just got stressed here. Let's go send out our troops. Let's go resolve that issue. And then we'll come home and we'll be done. And we would be fine. Mm-hmm. But the problem is we got this constant stuff going on. And then we have the second piece. And the second piece is that we run ourselves so hard, whatever we do, and we create a ton of excess inflammation. What do you think overtraining is? Overtraining is excess inflammation. It's saying that you're working out so hard that your body is not able to deal with all of the trauma. So therefore, it just keeps pumping out all of this inflammation. And now you got to do something with all that excess stuff, because I'll tell you what, it's just like that war, is that if you have that war go on too long, it's going to start killing civilians. And see, that's the thing about inflammation, guys, is that if you start fighting this war, at some point you'll start killing civilians, which is the surrounding areas, healthy areas of the body. And now you've got a bigger and bigger issue. It just becomes this futile cycle. You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah. So let me transfer over here to the talk a little bit more about this vessel control and high blood pressure. So I've taken this a Cardio Miracle, which is a nitric oxide supplement, for 2 years now. And I'm a heart patient. I had triple bypass several years ago, and was not in good shape at all. I still had edema. I still had a lot of issues with my blood flow. And so I started taking this, and 90 days later, and I'm not kidding you, my blood pressure dropped about 50 points on the high number. I have reduced my high blood pressure medication in half since that time, and still am down at that number. What does nitric oxide, the production of nitric oxide in your body, do with your vessels that would allow your blood pressure to drop like that?
Okay, so first, what is blood pressure? Blood pressure is the pressure that is measured, okay, right? Mm-hmm. When the blood is pushing against the blood vessel, okay, right? That's what.
Sure.
Okay, right? Mm-hmm. And so what you want to do is, if you've got a certain volume of blood that's going through that blood vessel, okay, right? And you've got a hard outer coating, okay, right? You've got a plastic pipe, if you will, okay, right? And it's not really malleable, it's not really elastic, it's not, anything. If you test how much pressure is against that wall, it's going to be pretty high, right? Because it's not moving. It's not moving. It's not okay, right? Mm-hmm. So imagine now you have a garden hose, and the garden hose is made of rubber, and it's a brand new garden, right? And all of a sudden you get that same amount of blood flow that's going through that hose, but it has the ability to expand a bit. And now when I test it, the pressure is not as high because it's expanding, mm-hmm. right? So it's not as good, right? So your blood pressure is high because you've got this hardening of these blood vessels. And so you have to say to you, well, how did they?
The blood vessel itself actually hardens above and beyond any, cholesterol or anything that might be in there.
Oh, like it's because the cholesterol, which is plaque, okay, right, is what's causing that hardening.
Okay.
Right? Yep. And so now take one step back is you have to say, well, how did that plaque get there in the first place? Well, that plaque got there in the first place because you had things in your blood that got into your blood that were able to make these little nicks and cuts in the arterial wall, in the blood vessel wall. So while it was going through those walls, it was making little nicks, cuts, mm-hmm. nicks, cuts, okay, right? Well, dude, you can't have these nicks and cuts there. And the reason why is, do remember, like that blood and those things that are in that blood, they gotta stay in the blood vessel. They can't seep out into the rest of the body, right? You can't have permeable things that are going into the permeable blood vessels, right? There are things that are supposed to stay in that blood vessel, and they're supposed to say, okay, right? And so all of a sudden, the body's got to be like, whoa, dude, we have this little nick and cut on this wall. We got to patch it up. So how it patches it up is by using cholesterol. It says, okay, let me use this cholesterol, this schlack, if you will, and let me paste it on that wall, let me clean it away, so now it's nice and smooth, and now that cut is no longer there, okay, right? So the thing is that taking a step back, what's causing those things is things you obviously consume, okay, right? But then it's also the things that are, we term this, free radicals, right? These are these molecules that are created due to various stresses that the body is under. Okay, right? And these free radicals, they can get, coated in things like sugar. That's called glycation. Okay, right? And so they coat themselves in sugar. Well, that is what causes those little nicks and cuts, right? They can get oxidized, mm-hmm. meaning that they get rancid. Okay, right? And when they get rancid, these little free radicals, all of a sudden, they make those nicks and cuts. So you have this glycation and oxidation of these molecules that are going through the blood that are making these nicks and cuts all through those blood vessels. And then you've got the body trying to make sure that that nick and cut doesn't open itself so big where things seep in or that seeps out. So it uses plaque, which isn't a bad thing. It uses cholesterol, which isn't a bad thing. It's a natural, healthy thing. When people talk about how terrible cholesterol is, dude, like
your body needs it.
Yeah,
your body's got to have it.
Right.
Real quick on this, Jeevers, so if you've got these nicks and cuts, and is blood pressure itself helping to cause that also?
Sure, because if all of a sudden you've got all of this high blood pressure, it's just stressing out that blood vessel, right? It's kind of like a varicose vein, right? What are varicose veins? Basically, just the veins have lost their elasticity, okay, right? And that normal blood flow that was going through there before, you didn't have any varicose veins before, it was the same blood flow, nothing new, okay, right? Is now causing that vein to pump out a bit, right? After years and years of that, what ends up happening is that it not only loses elasticity, it starts breaking up. And so then all of a sudden now you have risk of that blood flow actually coming out of that blood vessel. Okay, right? And so hence, like I said, value of the cholesterol and such. But what does nitric oxide do? So nitric oxide is a signaling molecule. So for the body, nitric oxide is a signaling molecule. And that molecule signals the repair of the endothelial wall. So it starts saying, hey, listen, you know what? Let's look at this the endothelial wall, by the way, is the inner lining of that blood vessels. It's called endothelial because it's the endothelial cells that make up the inner lining of that pipe, if you will, okay, right? And so therefore, the endothelial wall gets repaired through the signaling of nitric oxide. So imagine if you're doing nitric oxide all the time, whether there's various ways to have the signaling of nitric oxide. Because you do remember, guys, it's an innate thing. All you're doing with supplementation is just enhancing that, okay, right? So therefore now, this endothelial is always in this really great reparative recovery mode, which then keeps those walls nice and healthy, which then would make the walls nice and elastic, the right type of elasticity, the right type of flexibility, and now all of a sudden you reduce your blood pressure because you have healthy blood vessels.
So with those healthy blood vessels, is there actually then the possibility of reparation there? I mean, can you reverse what's happening there with that endothelial wall?
There is. There's actually like really great. So one of the things that they always talk about, obviously, is how exercise helps the endothelial wall, and especially like the plaque buildup, like behind the endothelial wall, to like reverse. Well, do remember, bud, the thing about nitric oxide is that you're mimicking a part of exercise, right? So like one of the best ways to produce nitric oxide is through exercise, through activity, right? Through movement. And so if you can do that, then awesome, you're going to have great nitric oxide production. If you can't, for whatever reason, then you need to find another way to do that, which could be supplementation and things like that, right? Consuming more natural nitrates, this is why every day I eat a ton of arugula. Like arugula, sure, I love the taste and stuff, but the reason why I eat arugula is because it's a natural form of a nitrate. And that nitrate then gets metabolized through two different pathways to nitric oxide. Right? So that's a food way for me to do that, right? So anyways, all I was saying is that what you said is that, yes, there has been plenty of research that shows that with greater nitric oxide production, you can actually reverse that, unhealthy plaque buildup that's found in those endothelial.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because this is a miracle to me. I mean, I've got a great cardiologist and all, but I don't have good checkups with him. I go to an annual checkup every year ever since I had the bypass surgery, right? Things are okay, but they're not really that great. And there's always issues that I've had over the last several years until, honestly, and I'm not doing this just because I've got this sponsor, right? I mean, I'm telling you, I went in for my last checkup and the doctor said, because he went in and did the angiogram, and he looks in and he says, I can't, your blood vessels look, and he literally said this word, fantastic, right? So he's looking at the endothelial wall on the interior of these things, and he said, your blood vessels, I was so happy that day because I'm always concerned about it, right? I mean, I walk around concerned about this constantly, but he said, they look fantastic. So this was a big change from the way they looked previously. So it's hard for me not to correlate that with the production of nitric oxide.
Well, yeah, but if you I mean, a really easy way to identify whether that was a key determinant or a primary determinant or not is that, how has your life changed from when you weren't taking it to when you were taking it?
Yeah.
And if anything, you've gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've gotten older, then, you obviously, it's not time that allowed you to get healthier. It was something else that you were doing. I started exercising a lot more. I started to do a lot more, HIIT training. I made sure that I was really not overtraining and I was managing my workload. I was doing a lot of breathing exercises. So I was really focused on bringing in oxygen into the body. I was doing all of these things. And he'd probably say, oh, that's probably why you have these really great results. Well, that's basically what I'm doing with a nitric oxide type of supplement is I'm taking, I'm not saying it's the same as all of those other benefits because there are other things that those things do that give you, things. But one of the primary things that it does is helps with this nitric oxide production. So, I was just kind of doing it in a different way. It's kind of interesting. So I formulated a product that was you probably have heard a lot of these beetroot powders, beet powders, right? And the whole essence of the beetroot powder, what is nitric oxide? So beets is one of the primary, or one of the most concentrated natural forms of nitrates. So that's how beet powder got so popular is because they were seeing all of these nitric oxide benefits, obviously, right? But one of the other things that promotes nitric oxide production is just the act of chewing. So when your mandibular joint, your jaw actually chews and bites down on things, it triggers a nitric oxide signal of production. And the reason why I say this is because here's a wonderful way that the body uses nitric oxide. So just like I told you, one of the main ways of nitric oxide, or things of nitric oxide, is it helps to promote vasodilation, relaxation of the blood vessels, which then promotes circulation, right? Mm-hmm. So think about this. When you're eating food, what are you trying to do? You're trying to break down those nutrients, break down that food into its individual nutrients to get them into the bloodstream and get them throughout the body. That's what you're doing. So guess what the body has done is it's made it easier for you to do that. It says, hey, listen, when you start eating these foods and I start feeling that pressure on that jaw, I'm going to release nitric oxide. And when I release nitric oxide, I'm going to relax those blood vessels and I'm going to improve that circulation. So when those nutrients get into the blood, I'll get it throughout the body. It's a beautiful thing that the body has done to ensure that nutrients from the foods that you consume get through the body, and it does it through nitric oxide.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I want to move over now to immune response. There seems to be more and more in the West a breakdown of our immune system. Again, talking about toxins, talking about the way we eat food, especially in the U.S. with all the processed food and the seed oils and everything else that we're consuming. How is it also the source of this is the blood flow that it strengthens our immune system, or how would nitric oxide strengthen your immune system?
So I think the issue is that we have compromised immune systems. And the reason why we have compromised immune systems is because we're overwhelming our immune system. So our immune system is the most powerful drug mechanism, technology on the face of the earth. Nothing will be stronger than our immune system. The issue is that we just completely overwhelm it, so it doesn't have the ability to use 100% of its forces on everything that we like face it with, if you will. If we did, we wouldn't have any issues. You know what I mean, right? And so I believe that a lot of the benefits that people are seeing with nitric oxide in the immune system, as you mentioned, is with inflammation, but it's the regulation and the management of the inflammatory processes. Because, you know, if you're going to get greater blood flow, you're going to get greater efficiency of those immune factors getting into the blood and into the body, right? And into the areas where it needs to be, right? If this is why older people, one of the reasons why older people, sedentary people, you know, those that have created a lifestyle that would cause them to have unhealthy blood, if you will, you know, sugar-coated blood, things like that, have issues with their immune system, is because there's the lack of circulation. There's the lack of the ability of the blood to do two things. Number one, carry nutrients, be concentrated with really healthy nutrients. And then there's the second thing, which is getting it to the areas of injury and insult. So if you do that, what happens? Your immune system is now working a lot more efficiently and a lot more powerfully. So therefore you get all these immune benefits, you know, because basically the immune system is now working the way that it needs to work, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Lastly, again, I want to go back to brain function and the neurotransmission there. Again, it's that one seems pretty natural. If you've got problems with blood flow, then you're going to have problems with cognitive function. You're going to have problems with memory. You're going to have problems with whatever it might be. And so greater blood flow is going to allow, I'm supposing, your brain to work at its capacity. Is that right?
Yeah, 100. You got two benefits. You've got the fact that all of a sudden, you know, the brain is that blood-brain barrier, that barrier that is between, you know, the brain and the rest of the body is super, super sensitive. And it is super, like it is very careful about the things that it brings into the brain. Okay, right? And so therefore, you know, there's not a lot of things that can be brought into the brain. And so therefore, you know, oxygen is one of those things, obviously, that it is a necessity. The more oxygen that you bring to the brain, the more ability for the brain to function well, because you've got, remember, one of the things that we have to remember, and there's a lot of talk about this whole metabolic disease, right? Metabolic disease, right? And metabolic disease is basically saying, hey, listen, our cells are super unhealthy. And when our cells are super unhealthy, the cells are the building block of the entire body. So what can we do for cellular health? Well, one of the things that we need to remember is that there is an engine of energy in that cell, what we talked about earlier today, which is the mitochondria. That mitochondria, the more that you can do for that mitochondria, the more healthy and resilient that cell is going to be to attack and all that sort of stuff. And you do remember this, right? Is that if you have healthy cells, you have healthy duplication. And that's one of the things we have to remember is that, you know, if all of a sudden... Say that
again, when you have healthy cells, you have what?
Healthy duplication of those cells, of healthier cells, right? So if all of a sudden you have a lot of sick cells or weak cells, it's not like two weak cells make a strong cell, right? Like two weak cells just make another weak cell.
Yeah. And
then makes another weak cell, makes another weak cell, you know, right? And I'm not even talking about cancer. I'm just talking about weak cells. I'm just talking about, you know, right? Cells that just aren't diseased, they're just not functioning as well as they could be functioning, right? Well, if you get a ton of those cells that aren't functioning as well as they could function, now you have a body that can't function as well as it needs to function, right? And so therefore, oxygen does that, guys. Oxygen has the ability for that. And so therefore, nitric oxide is so clear. But here's the other big thing. You know, you were talking about the cognitive effects. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about cognitive decline. We're talking about everything from cognitive decline, which naturally happens to all of us as we age and things like that, you know, right? To then dementia, then to Alzheimer's, to, okay, right? Well, guys, I mean, a lot of that happens because we don't give our brain the time to detoxify. And there's only one time that the body, the body, but especially the brain, gets to detoxify, when it runs its own lymphatic system. It's called the glymphatic system, which is sleep. And then specifically in stage 4 sleep. So therefore, if you're not getting good, healthy sleep, then all of a sudden you're not getting the ability for that glymphatic work to happen, which is the brain detoxification. I mean, think about how many people that are overweight, especially let's talk about overweight because it's easy to understand, and they can't breathe all that well, right? Notice how their sleep is just like terrible. And then notice how many types of health issues that they have. I mean, no question that they have the health issues because they're just, you can't just be overweight by eating a bunch of broccoli. You know what I mean, right? Like you did some things that, okay, right? But you can't even get to a place of really great recovery from that because you're not getting great sleep, which then causes this buildup of toxicity in the body. So anyways, the whole point is that, yeah, guys, you know, the greater, I mean, on one hand, we love nitric oxide because it's a signaling gas. It has the ability to increase circulation. It relaxes blood vessels. It does all that. Awesome. Great. Love it. Love it. But let's not forget, you got to bring great blood into those areas. And if you can do that, then you only enhance the benefits of what nitric oxide does. You know, so it's not just like, oh man, I'll just take this and I'll be okay. I mean, think about it, Greg. It's not like you're not living an unhealthy life. You just happen to be living a healthy life. And then now you have a catalyst to get all that health into the rest of the body. Yeah.
And I'm just saying it works. It's, you know, there's a lot of garbage, I think, that's out there in this kind of an industry because it's not really tested. But when you go back and you look at the science behind all of this, it is really solid. It is really good.
Yeah.
So, Jeevers, really appreciate you coming on here. You're a great guest, by the way, on this topic. So I'd love to have you back again sometime. But I do want to give you a shout out here for your company, and you have a few products. Tell us about that and where can people find you?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I started my own brand about 4 years ago. I've been formulating supplements for about 21 years. It's called Proze, Proze. And yeah, I developed this. It became a passion project that kind of grew, but I developed 4 products specifically in these areas. So one is pain relief, muscle recovery, nerve issues. So I have a product for that called Nerve. I've got another product that focuses on healthy sleep and healthy sleep patterns, helps people to get into sleep, stay asleep through the night, and most importantly, get greater amounts of stage 3 and stage 4 sleep. I have another product that focuses on immunity, but it focuses it through allowing the body to adapt and to manage stress. That's one of the key things is that, you know, how I believe that you build a more resilient immune system is by making sure that it can adapt and manage to the stresses that you're applying. I have another product that is a piece of gum that focuses on cognitive benefits, helps people to focus, help people to concentrate longer, and then another one on emotional balance. So it's kind of 5 products that I put together that are very nature-centric, that focused on kind of areas where, you know, I felt individuals were taking a lot of medications that they didn't necessarily need to take because they weren't at a point in which they would need to take that medication, you know? And yeah, we've just been having a great time with it. It's awesome.
And where can they find this?
You can go on our website, which is just www.proze, so proze.com. And we have our products online.
Awesome. Jeevers, thanks so much. Really appreciate you coming on, and we'll have you back.
All right, sounds great, Greg. Thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks.